I'm Adelaide and here are 10 traits that are often overlooked in AFAB people with ADHD. AFAB is just assigned female at birth. Number 1, daydreaming. If your school report was anything like, oh, she's always looking out the window daydreaming, or she's always got her head in the clouds and things like that, it's always just looked at as a typical girl, a typical teenager, when in fact daydreaming constantly is a very big sign of ADHD, and it is often overlooked in AFAB people just as a girl thing. And that isn't the case. It's not just a girl thing. Constant daydreaming is a sign of ADHD, and it can be a sign of ADHD in boys and in girls, but I'm just saying mostly overlooked in female people. Number 2, heightened anxiety. Almost every single person who was assigned female at birth who has late diagnosed ADHD was probably diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder before they was looked at for ADHD. And this can be for a multitude of reasons. One of them is the fact that like a lot of AFAB people with ADHD strive for perfection, and it can cause a lot of internal anxiety, and therefore our anxiety is just looked at as anxiety, and it's never looked at as a trait of ADHD, when heightened anxiety is a very common trait of ADHD, but again, completely overlooked in AFAB people. Number 3, that's 4, it's fast talking. I was constantly told when I was younger that I needed to speak slower, and if I was with anybody like my mum and we was talking to somebody else and I would speak, they'd always look at my mum like, what did she say? And my mum knew what I was saying. She'll just repeat what I've said to the person, but slower. And I had to purposely talk slower in order to be understood and be accepted by people, because I just constantly spoke really fast and nobody could understand what I was saying until I speak to other people with ADHD and we both talk fast, and I'm like, oh my god, this conversation is giving my brain the good itch. But talking really fast, being like hyperactive in that way and being like full of energy and talking loads about different subjects and being all excited is often characterized as just, oh, she just talks too much because she's always doing this or always doing that and blah blah blah. It's always just ignored and overlooked, and it's not because it isn't a symptom of ADHD, because it is. It's a very prominent symptom of ADHD, but again, in AFAB people it's often overlooked as just them being an eccentric person. Number 4, that's 8. Why do I keep doing that? Trouble maintaining friendships. Now, this is one of the biggest and most common symptoms of ADHD amongst all people, and it is trouble maintaining friendships or trouble actually starting friendships. And it's not through lack of trying, believe me, it is not. We just have a very different brain to non-ADHD people. Our brain is kind of like really fast and really changing all the time, and we can't stick to like hobbies and things like that because we get bored and we're chasing the dopamine, and we are often looked at as a little bit more childish than our peers, even though that isn't true. It just makes it a lot harder for us to form connections with people and then for them connections to last. And the friendships that we do have are often not real friendships, because a lot of the times, and I'm not obviously speaking for every single person with ADHD or every single like female presenting person with ADHD, and I can't speak for the entire community, but for myself and my own perspective, I find that it was really hard to maintain friendships because you was never truly being yourself. You always had to mute yourself. You always had to like bring yourself down to everybody else's level in order for them to accept you and want to hang out with you, and in order for you to not be too much. Side note, you are never ever too much. You are never too much for the right people, okay? In keeping with that lovely little anecdote of not being able to keep and maintain friendships, we're also not able to keep and maintain hobbies, because we are constantly chasing dopamine, and it goes the same way for boys and girls. But again, I am specifically talking about AFAB people just because we're the ones that are often mostly overlooked. But much like anyone with ADHD, AFAB people really struggle to maintain hobbies, and our interests change a lot, and we're always like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, actually I want to do this. And it is constantly changing because we're always chasing the dopamine, and we're always trying to get that fix of dopamine at the same level we do when we first start a hobby. For example, if you think, oh my god, I really want to start rollerblading, and you'll buy the most expensive rollerblades that you can find, and you'll start rollerblading, you'll do it for a week, and then you're like, it's not giving you the same release of dopamine as it was when you first started. So you try to stick at the hobby, but because you're not getting that release the same way, it goes into the ADHD doom pile of other hobbies that you no longer do anymore, and then you'll find another hobby which is brand new, a new sparkly hobby, and you'll get the same release of dopamine straight away, and oh my god, this hobby's amazing, blah blah blah. And then again, it will die down as the dopamine dies down, and then you'll again look for another hobby, and it's just a cycle and it just keeps going, which is why we have an ADHD doom pile of hobbies and interests that we love and then don't love, and then sometimes love again but nowhere near as much as the first time. Number 6 is being a perfectionist. So much like the heightened anxiety, being a perfectionist can be one of the trigger points of our anxiety becoming really high, especially when we're constantly told in like school environments and stuff that we can do better. You'd be so smart if you just tried harder. You'd be so much better at this if you just tried harder. And inside we're kind of sat there like, I'm literally trying my hardest and I don't understand why that's not good enough. It's an odd feeling of constantly feeling not good enough while also constantly feeling like you're too much. But again, side note, you are the perfect amount of everything, I promise. Constantly being told these things, or, you know, if you didn't daydream so much, you'd be so smart, and all of these like little things that get told to us and are just kind of put down as like little traits or whatever, but are not ever seen as anything to do with ADHD. It's just seen as us not trying hard enough, and therefore we are then put down to being a perfectionist because we strive for perfection, because we want to know why we can't do things the same way other people can do it, and we put in so much more effort just to end up with the same amount of work and then be like told that it's not good enough, you need to try harder, and you just keep that cycle going. So you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and striving for perfect. And then a lot of females with ADHD are labelled perfectionists, or, you know, I just won't do something if I can't do it perfect, or if I do this, it needs to be perfect. Number 7, crying easily, and it's often, oh my goodness, always put down to hormones, being emotional, just being a teenager, or anything like that. It is never ever looked at as us not being able to regulate our emotions correctly. Females with ADHD tend to cry a lot. We are very emotional because we struggle to regulate our emotions, and with ADHD it is very all or nothing, and it's not just like a little bit of everything, it's everything. So if you feel sad, you feel sad, like you feel really sad, and it can seem that you're crying a lot and crying easily over the minor situations, whereas to you it isn't minor. And again, it is put down to just girls being girls being emotional, girls like going through puberty and things like that, and it's never looked at as an ADHD trait, when in fact it is an ADHD trait. But in keeping with that, also having extreme mood swings, which again often put down to hormones, and it isn't always just your hormones, sometimes it can be. And I know firsthand that being on your period, PMSing and things like that can increase your ADHD symptoms, especially the symptoms that are mood swings and being emotional and stuff, because our emotions are heightened, and oftentimes we are just looked at as over emotional, we are looked at as all kinds of other issues, and more so than not, a lot of girls with ADHD tend to get diagnosed with bipolar disorder because of the extreme mood swings before they're even looked at for ADHD. Am I at number 8? I think I'm at number 9. Easily distracted. Every single person with ADHD is easily distracted, and no, it is nothing like the "oh, a squirrel" meme. I am so sick of seeing that damn meme. Being easily distracted can come from anything. You can be easily distracted in case of you might be hyper focused on a task and someone will start talking to you, and then you can slowly feel all of the motivation just drifting away from you, and because you got distracted, and then you will just not continue with your task. It's being sat in an exam and then being able to hear the way that someone's pen is moving and being distracted by the sound of their pen and then not being able to focus on your exam. It's being in a meeting and actually focusing more so on the fact that someone's tie is a little bit crooked and not being able to focus on the actual meeting. It's easily distracted with everything, and not just like, oh, we're having a conversation that isn't very important and oh, look, a squirrel. Like, that's not what it's like. I mean, it can be like that, but it's more so easily distracted as in you'll get distracted by little things and then your focus will just be on that and away from the actual situation that you're in. And last but not least, being clumsy. I am so clumsy, and it it was always just looked at as me just being too girly, or oh, you kick like a girl, or oh, you throw like a girl, or why are you always falling over, where'd you get that bruise from? And I'm just really clumsy. I don't have a lot of spatial awareness, and I find it difficult to know where I fit inside of places, in terms of I can't judge the size of a gap on whether I'm going to bump into that gap or not when I walk past it. And a lot of AFAB people are very clumsy, and again, it's just looked at as a quirky personality trait and never taken seriously as anything to be doing with ADHD. But yeah, that's my list of things, and I know this video is probably very boring and I just talked a lot, and I'm sorry, but I hope that it was educational and helpful, and if you want to correct me on anything, I am more than happy to be corrected. I hope that everyone has a super good day, and I will see you next time. Bye!